for others, love for the mission of God, what He wanted us to do when He left earth. Today, we're going to be talking about love through service, serving others. And I know you may think, isn't that what we've already been talking about for 2 weeks? Yeah, a little bit, but we're going into a little more depth today on love through service. And I want to read a couple of scriptures before we have our guests come up. Galatians 5:13 and 14. For brethren, ye have been called unto liberty, only use not liberty for an occasion to the flesh, but by love serve one another. Serve one another. For all the law is fulfilled in one word, even this: thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Everything revolves around serving others. It's a mind change. Pastor used the phrase paradigm shift. That's what it is. When we get our eyes off of ourselves and off of our needs and we start serving others, it's amazing the changes that occur in our lives. Matthew 25, and this is a little lengthier, 35 through 40. For I was an hungered, and ye gave me meat. I was thirsty, and ye gave me drink. I was a stranger, and ye took me in. Naked, and ye clothed me. I was sick, and ye visited me. I was in prison, and ye came unto me. Then shall the righteous answer him, saying, Lord, when saw we thee and hungered, and fed thee, or thirsty, and gave thee drink? When saw we thee a stranger, or took thee in, or naked, and clothed thee? Or when saw we thee sick, or in prison, and came unto thee? And the king shall answer and say unto them, Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as ye have done it unto one of the least of these, my brethren, ye have done it unto me. One of the least of these. So, when he and I were talking about who could we get to help us today as far as talking about serving others and seeing a need and doing it, he said, oh, that's Kaelyn all the way. So Kaelyn is going to be joining us today along with Pastor. You can come on up. Let's give her a hand. How's that?
Now she knows it's my fault that she's up here.
Oh.
She was giving me that. Oh, absolutely. She was giving me that look all the way up here. So y'all need to pray for Sister Kaelyn. I believe the Lord going to do a brand new thing in her life today.
Well, it's true, though. When it comes to Sister Kaelyn sees a need, she doesn't broadcast it. She sees that somebody has something they need, and she jumps right in. And there are others here in the assembly who will do that. We wanted to give Kaelyn a chance to get up here. I told her the other day, I said, you have so much locked in your brain that other people need to hear. And she said, or we can keep my brain on lockdown. So we're getting all that good stuff out. Okay, let's start with question number 1. How does serving others demonstrate Christ's love? How does serving others demonstrate Christ's love? Pastor, let's start with you.
I think from the perspective of serving, his example has to be our ultimate goal, right? My goal every day when I get up is to love like Jesus, and to walk like Jesus, and to serve like Jesus served. I think it's it's interesting that the scripture that she read there in Matthew, where he says, when you've done it for the least of these, we read that a little, our reading of that generally is an error, because he says, verily I say unto you, inasmuch as ye have done it unto the least of these, my brethren, you've done it unto me. And we take that, my brethren, as if that is him addressing those who are there, but that's not what he's talking about. That's a continual sentence. There's no punctuation there. For that to make sense and for that to be him addressing the disciples and calling the disciples his brethren, the sentence structure has to be different. And so when we begin to look at that, he said, when you've done it unto the least of these who are my brethren, you've done it unto me. And so Jesus is giving us an example of how we are to serve others. And if we're trying to love like Jesus loved and we're trying to walk like Jesus walked, then serving will come as a natural byproduct of that walk. And so when it comes to demonstrating the love of Christ through serving, I don't know that there's a more effective way to demonstrate his love than by serving. And I would even add this to it. It's not just serving someone, because it's one thing for the bank president to come through and I'm going to get up and make sure that I open the door for him. It's one thing for somebody who can do something for me to run to go serve them. But it's altogether different whenever it's someone who will never be able to do anything for me in return. They can't help me at all. They're not going to benefit my life. They're not going to write a check and pay off my house next week. Right? It's serving someone who really doesn't have an opportunity to serve you back. And I think that's a lot of what that example is. And when we serve that way, I think we are closer to exhibiting the love of Christ than at any other time.
That's right. Kaelyn, give us your spin on this one.
I have just a shortened version of 1 John 4:21. And whoever loves God must also love his brother. So really it's as simple as that. You can't love God and not love everybody else around you. You can't go around and not try to help everybody around you. And whether it's intentional or not, that's just what you have to do.
That's it. Yes. I had jotted down Matthew 25:45. This is the New International Version. It says, he will reply, I tell you the truth, whatever you did not do for one of the least of these, you did not do it for me. So it kind of lets us know there is nobody in this world that we can say, they're not really that important. I don't really need to help them. There's nobody that he didn't die for. So I love what you guys have said.
Well, and I don't want to hijack this whole session, but all of the men who are sitting in this room that were at the conference this past weekend know where my brain is at right now on Brother Urshan's message Friday night, because I have always talked about Jesus' response to the Pharisees when they asked him, what's the greatest commandment? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, right? And then he said, and the second is like unto it, love your neighbor as yourself. And he tied these two together. And I've always approached that from the perspective of how easy it is for me to love myself. But in actuality, when we get down to the basis of it, the person probably that I have a bigger issue with on the face of this earth than anyone else is the guy that lives between my elbows. Because I know all the flaws. I know where all the problems are. When I show up on Sunday or you see me out somewhere, hopefully you're seeing the product that I want to project to everyone, but you don't see the messed up stuff inside. And a lot of the problem for us in loving others is we don't love ourselves.
That's right.
And if I'm mad at myself, if I'm frustrated with myself, if I'm disappointed in myself, it is so much easier for me to be angry and frustrated and disappointed with others and then not want to serve them. And so for us, we have got to get a fresh revelation of how we are loved by him and begin to care for ourselves in that same way so that we're able to show love unto those around us.
That's Absolutely. Good. All right, Brother Paul.
So in that same vein, there are times that I'll say things that upset Dawn, and I have to go back and circle back and say, actually, honey, I said that the way I did is I'm mad at myself.
That's
it was
good.
not directed at all to you, and I'm sorry. I did
That's
that in
good.
error.
Very good.
And that's such a huge part of serving others. Many times I don't feel like helping anybody else because I'm so ticked off at me. I don't want to help nobody. And it's not that I'm being selfish. It's that I am essentially penalizing myself for whatever it is that I've done or said or whatever that may be. And then I let that begin to bleed over into my relationships with everybody else.
And that helped. When we first got married, I didn't understand that. And there were times that he would be frustrated about something, and I would say, and he would snap, and I'd be like, I'm sorry, I did. He'd say, no, it's not you I'm angry with. I'm aggravated at myself. And so then I learned, oh, okay, so I'm in the clear. Sister Nanette.
I go with what Pastor said because it's still kind of there. It's easier for me to love other people than myself. I've struggled with that for years because of the way I was made to feel as a child, that I wasn't worth it, and that a lot of verbal abuse. So I didn't have a lot of self-love, but it was easier to take care of other people and love other people than for me. So I always have trouble with that verse, but I'm learning to love myself more. I'm learning I'm listening to songs like You Are Royalty and things like that, where I'm trying to see myself the way he sees me.
That's good.
But for me anyway, it is easier to do for other people than to do for myself.
Yes, that's good. Okay, let's go on to question number 2. What are some practical ways you can serve your community? This is getting down to the nitty-gritty, all right? We can talk about it. We can talk about helping others, serving others. Now let's talk about some ways we can actually do it. Kaelyn, we'll start with you on this.
So practicality is all about your day-to-day life.
Yes.
Everybody is at a different time in their own way. So what I have here is the way that I can demonstrate him to people is I deal with a lot of different people from all over the place, whether it's, they're coming in and they don't even live in this state, but something happened and they're very distraught. A lot of the time it's just, you're okay, God's got it. Like, it's pretty much as simple as that. And you afterwards, you say that, they look at you and they're like, wow, I really didn't expect that from this, girl who's probably the age of my granddaughter telling me, calm down, God's got it. And, we'll get you straight today. And it's pretty much just reminding people that everything happens for a reason. And he put them there for that reason.
That's good. Yes. You want to expound on that?
Sure. I love the way that she put it, in the fact that when you start talking about practicality, that's gonna vary for each person.
Right.
Right. And so, from a practical standpoint, if practical application of this concept is something that is going to be different for me than it is for other people, then I have to realize the way things look in my world, I've got to be aware. I have to be not just intentional, but I can't go into situations and go throughout my day with the blinders on, right? That I get tickled. My wife is the queen of the to-do list. I don't know that there's actually a done list anywhere, but there is a to-do list that would blow your mind. And she lives her day by this to-do list many times. And I will talk about, well, you've got the to-do list blinders on, because she's zeroed in and focused. And I get that. That's the way that she has to go about things to get anything accomplished. But I think it's important for us in our day, wherever we're going. I mean, you're getting ready to go into a grocery store. Just begin to talk to the Lord and ask Him, God, if there's a need here today that you want me that I can serve someone else, would you make it obvious to me? Would you make it obvious where I can't miss it? And begin to flow in that. The Apostle Paul talks about to pray without ceasing. That doesn't mean that you're always walking around praying so you can't be in conversation with anybody else, but it's talking about being in a mindset of communication and communing with God all the time. And so if we're going to be Spirit-led, we've got to be open to that. And we've got to have our physical eyes open to see the needs that are around us. And so from a practical standpoint of serving somebody else, if you are in a situation where needs are evident to you, we don't just pass the buck and go, well, somebody else will take care of that. Somebody else will help that person out. Somebody else. I was walking into Walmart, Lowe's, something like that a couple weeks ago. And as I'm walking from my truck to the front door, there's an older gentleman and his wife, and they're trying to fit a large box into their back seat. Now, first of all, when I'm walking up on this, I'm thinking, I don't think that box is going to fit. But I started noticing there were 6 or 7 seemingly able-bodied adult men who just breezed right past them, never stopped, never said, can I help you, any of those types of things. And I'm watching this gentleman struggle trying to fit this box in. It wasn't a great sacrifice for me to stop and say, can I give you a hand? And it was kind of cute because at the end of that, she was like, do you... she said something like, we only live an hour from here. Could you mind following us to the house and help us get it unloaded? She was kind of laughing. And I thought, okay, Lord, are you testing me to see if I'm really going to serve or not? But I think serving others is something that it's something that doesn't happen unless we are intentionally searching for that, unless we're looking for those opportunities. But I'm telling you, when you look for them, to put that into practice is easy because they will consistently be around you. We've just got to open our eyes.
That's the truth. I was listening to Brother Terry Schock, and he was doing a session on serving others. And he said, start with your family.
Absolutely.
And he said, let me tell you, that's tough to serve your family because you're with them. They're the ones who get on your nerves more than anybody else. And then he looked at, I guess there was a section of teenagers where he was teaching. He said, teenagers, when you get home, ask your mom, what can I do that will help ease your load this afternoon? And it must have been hilarious, the expression on their faces, because the audience laughed. I couldn't really see what was going on. But when we start serving at home, it makes it easier to serve outside of that. And when he was talking about practical ways to serve, he summed it up with one phrase that you even said, look for the need.
Right.
Look for the need, and wherever you see need, that's where you step in.
Well, and I think that's difficult for us from the standpoint of Americans.
Yeah.
Because we're really good at ignoring needs. We're really good at looking past, right? Oh, I don't want to bother them. I don't want to get in their business. On and on. We'll give ourselves every excuse for not stopping and saying, can I help you with that? Is there anything that I can do for you today? And I think it's something that it has to start at home, because if we don't begin that lifestyle of service at home with serving those who are closest to us, we can't expect for us to just naturally go out and begin to serve strangers. Mm-hmm. It has to become something that we're looking for. And the amazing part about it is once you start down this pathway, you see it everywhere you go. Mm-hmm. And in all honesty, if the Lord is going to use you to serve somebody else and He wants to bless somebody else, get ready, because you're going to see needs everywhere that you go. Mm-hmm. I mean, Brother Parker sees many more needs than we do because they call him to come to their house because he's a firefighter. There's a need represented there everywhere he goes. People in medical situations or in traumatic accidents and that type of stuff. But for us, it shouldn't take flashing lights and sirens for us to see a need. And so when we begin to talk to God and say, Lord, if you'll show me a need, I'll do something about it. He'll start showing those to you because He wants to use us to be able to make that difference. And the flip side of that is, if you're not interested in helping anybody else, God's not going to waste the time to come along and say, hey, why don't you do this, that, or the other? Because you're going to walk through, oh, that's just me. That's just me. Brother Greg.
What's harder in our daily walk is to help someone when it costs.
Yes.
When it costs something. You know, there are a lot of things that's easy to do. You meet somebody and you say, I'm going to pray for you, you know. So be ye warmed and filled, you know.
Absolutely.
Have a lovely day. But when we see a situation where it takes effort
Right.
Mm-hmm.
and time,
Yes.
I mean, Jesus was our perfect example.
Mm-hmm.
It cost him everything.
Right.
So I have to make sure that I'm not dodging situations where it costs me more than I may be willing to give.
And I don't
good.
mean to jump on topic
No.
there. I'm sorry. You just brought up the concept of to serve whenever it costs you something. Let me tell you, walking with the Lord, when you begin to see things, concepts like serving others, aligns right up along the side of giving.
That's right.
It always will. These concepts coexist. In other words, if God sees that I want to be a blessing to others, He's going to show me opportunities to bless others. He's going to show me opportunities to serve others in the same way that if God sees that I'm not going to hoard His blessings financially, but I'm going to turn that around and I'm going to give to others and I'm going to bless the kingdom and I'm going to do all those things. God sees someone that He can trust with blessing. A lot of times we look at this and we want God to trust us with financial blessing, but we don't want God to trust us with the responsibility of serving somebody else. And those two things walk hand in hand.
That's right.
Your giving and serving, because in most cases, service is going to cost you something.
That's right.
And if it doesn't cost you anything, was it really serving? I guess is kind of the
Right.
point I'm trying to get to.
You were talking about the list. If you've ever heard of the phrase dopamine hit, all right, that's when you get that little, your brain is like, yes. All right. They say there's a dopamine hit every time that you check your Facebook notifications when you clear those out. Okay, I don't know. I do know that when I make a list, every time I get to check off something that's done, I get that little hit. It's that little thumbs up in the brain, right?
Way to go.
Yes.
You get that internal atta girl.
Yes, I do. So I have a tendency when I'm going somewhere, I'm on a mission because I'm checking off that list. I'm getting that dopamine hit, right?
Well, and I'm not saying that those two things can't
No, but
coexist.
I'm explaining.
Right.
I'm explaining that I had to train my brain. Yes, I'm on a mission because I'm clearing these things off, but while I'm here, I've got to be open to what's happening. And it can be something as simple as I'm pushing a cart and I see this little lady trying to get something from the top shelf. And I just stop and say, can I get that for you? Which one do you need? And I get it because, you know, I feel like Jolly Green Giant at Walmart around everybody else. So I just, can I get that for you? The look on their faces, they're shocked that somebody took time out of their day to help them.
She wants you following her around to get stuff off the top shelf. No, Sister Kaelyn walks around behind people in Walmart and goes, do you need anything off the bottom shelf? I can get down there and get that for you.
But it shocks them that somebody actually took the time to help them with something. It could be something that small. So then I feel kind of bad because you said if it doesn't cost us anything, is it really serving? So I'm like,
But it costs you time. I know you from the standpoint that list, it's like it's written in gold, y'all. It's like she sits up at night with a hammer and a chisel and just puts all the things in this golden tablet. I mean, it's the pinnacle. It's what she's reaching for, and she's trying to get all those things done. So for you to stop and adjust your focus, that is absolutely costing you something.
I'm saving you on medication because I'm getting these dopamine hits for free. See?
Y'all need to pray for my household.
Does anyone else have a comment before we move on to the next question?
Before
'Cause
she
we need to
completely
rapidly get out of
derails
this.
this thing. Goodness gracious.
Okay.
Nope, next question. Go
All
for it.
right. So This one, I'm skipping down a little bit. What challenges do you face in engaging in service oriented outreach? All right. I believe that everybody here, you honestly do. Your heart, you really want to help people. You really do. But we run into challenges. So, Kaelyn, give us some challenges that you face, even though you have this good heart and you want to help everybody. What challenges do you run into?
So a big challenge that I run into is mostly people think that all churches are the same, that every experience that they had at some other church, they're going to have here. And so a challenge that I'm running into right now with somebody that I've been trying to help and kind of, really show love to is she told me the other day, when I was in high school, I went to a church and it was just to impress a friend's family, but I went. And when I went, they were receiving communion, and the preacher said, if you are not a part of this church, baptized or in church, you are not allowed to receive communion with us. And she was like, and so ever since then, I have this fear that you're just going to be singled out, just like that. You can't participate. And I think that that's really, we're commanded to love, and, you have to really show people we're not going to single you out like that. I'm not trying to show you love because I'm singling you out. I'm trying to show you love because God told me, hey, it's this one.
Yes, that's good. That's good. What other challenges do you run into?
Challenges for me when it comes to serving is getting myself out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
As much as, I talked about having issues with loving ourselves because we know where all the problems are. We also know how we feel like we ought to be treated.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels good when others treat us nice. And to serve others, you are putting yourself beneath somebody else. It's literally Jesus' example. She talked about communion, which brings me back to the Last Supper, where Jesus grabs the basin and starts to wash feet. That was the job of the lowest servant in the household, because nobody walked around in leather shoes in those days. Everybody feet were nasty. You're walking through Lord knows what, sharing roadways with all sorts of livestock and all other types of things. And so that water basin represented the lowest level of employment in the house of a servant. And Jesus said, I'm gonna show you how to serve in the fact that I'm gonna make myself abased. I am going to go to the lowest to serve you. And that's the reason why Peter was so incensed. Lord, no, you can't do that. Let us wash your feet instead. Because Peter began to recognize, wait a second, you're the Messiah. Why are you doing this? And I think a lot of times for me, it's easy sometimes to get into our own headspace of, well, I don't have time, or I'm not going to stoop to do that. We've got to be careful in those situations, because if God presents us with an opportunity to serve someone, and we're saying, no, I won't do that because I'm too good to do that, we are lumping ourselves in with those that Brother Greg talked about, that you see someone that is naked and cold and destitute and say, oh, be ye warmed and filled, and go on. Jesus said, you didn't do nothing. You didn't accomplish anything for them. And so a lot of times the challenge is being like Christ and following that example.
I jotted a couple things down. Time is precious and time is limited. And so time can be a challenge. We want to help someone, but by the time you work and you cook and you do laundry or whatever it is that you've got on your schedule, there's not a lot of time to really get out there and do what you want to do. So time can be a challenge. Another thing I jotted down is emotional toll. Because if you're really wanting to help people who are hurting or help someone who's in a need, it's like people like Brother Rick who are working in the medical field. I can't imagine the emotional toll that it takes seeing people who are unwell. Sister Sadie, how often do they see Healthy people come in. They're constantly seeing people who are sick and at their lowest and at their worst, and they're constantly giving, and it plays an emotional toll on your body. So giving to others and serving others has an emotional risk to it too. Finances. You may be saying, okay, my finances are limited. I can't help someone who's in front of me. I've been in the grocery line before, and some sweet little lady's trying to get her money out of her wallet and she doesn't have enough. And I've done the mental math. Okay, I only have this much. Am I going to be able to help them? So there is a financial challenge involved sometimes. Sister Leah, let's hear from you.
Some of the challenges I have faced is trying to help someone and they get mad at me because they think I want something in return.
Right, yes.
And it's just trying to convince them, no, I just want to help you.
Yes.
I just want to be nice.
That's true. In today's society, we expect something for everything. If somebody helps me, then they want something.
I've also faced, and I know it's a situation others have faced as well, is they take advantage of you.
Right.
They run you over. You give them an inch, they try to take a mile, and as soon as you put that boundary up, they turn around and go, well, you don't really love me. You don't want to serve me. You don't want to help me.
Uh-huh. That is today's society. You're right. And then we're going over to Sister Nanette.
Well, while you're taking that mic over, let me jump in here because I think it's important for us to notice that hurting people hurt people.
Yes.
And so if you are going to serve those who have needs, you need to understand that there is a risk with that. But hear me, if they reject what you're doing or if they're angry or any of those types of things, first of all, recognize these are natural human emotions. This is not outside of the realm of possibility. You should expect it potentially to happen. But secondly, you need to know that whatever you do in His name,
yes,
you are doing on His behalf. And so they're not really rejecting you. They're rejecting who you serve. They're rejecting the one in whose name that you're coming. And here would be my caution to every person. If you're trying to help someone or give someone assistance who either they respond in one of those ways that Sister Leah has just pointed out, if you are trying to help them and they respond in that fashion, never close the door. Never close the door. Many of you in private conversation have heard me say this in talking about specific issues. We don't close the door. We always leave the door open. And so you'll never go wrong by showing somebody the love of Jesus. You let them know, I'm sorry that you feel that way, but I love you and I'm here for you. And you continue to go on. Many times they will close the door, but then depending upon how we respond to them, they will return whenever they're actually ready to face a lot of these things. Bishop Tenney used to say, very few folks will remember your entrance, but everyone will remember your exit.
That's right.
And that applies to when we're trying to get involved in people's lives. They may say things that are hurtful, but if we're doing this in His name, we've got to recognize I'm representing Jesus.
Right.
And so how do I want them to receive Him? How do I want them to remember that interaction? So always have that in mind. Yes, ma'am.
Well, like Sister Lisa said, for me, one of the things is emotional toll. Because Mike will tell you, I empathize a whole lot. He has banned me at times from watching the news because I will just sit there and cry over things people are suffering through.
Brother Mike, could you put that ban across the whole church? I think that'd be good. Just stop watching the news, y'all. It's not helping. Go ahead.
But overextending yourself, I have belonged to a lot of different organizations over the years where it's always a core small group doing everything. and just not, of trying to do too much. I mean, one 9/11, I spent more than half the day running around Albemarle County delivering cookies to fire departments because we only had a few ladies. And they were like, well, we can't hit them all, so we'll just do. And I went, no, if we're going to hit some, we're going to hit them all. And so, it took me better part of the day to get to. I saw parts of Albemarle County I don't think I've seen in years. But I tend to take on too much. I want to help this group and I want to help this group. And it becomes overwhelming because then if Lindy calls me to babysit the kids or, there are other things in my schedule, then it just starts to overload. And I feel the physical toll as much as the emotional toll because I suddenly feel like I can't help the people I want to help.
Right. That's where I saw, and I'm the same way. I have this inflated thing that makes me think that I'm going to get all these things done. My brain honestly thinks, oh, yeah, I'll be able to accomplish that. So I get where you're coming from. And then I remember this, I don't remember if it was Chick-fil-A or who it was, some CEO said.
Chick-fil-A. Do you want me to tell the story?
Well,
briefly?
I was talking about do less, but do it well.
Chick-fil-A, in the beginning, they were getting beaten by Boston Market. And they kept trying to figure out how do we get bigger, how do we get bigger, how do we get bigger. And finally, the CEO, Mr. Truett Cathy, slammed his hands down on the table and he said, we're not trying to get bigger, we need to get better. And if we get better, we'll get bigger. And I think that's a lot of the situation.
Yeah. So I've had to narrow down. I tell myself it's better to do a few things well than to try to do a whole bunch of things and just scatter it all.
Well, and I think it's about also, excuse me, it's recognizing your own physical
yes
and mental limitation. If somebody wants me to help them with some electrical stuff that's minor in their house, I can handle that. We need to rewire some switches or something like that. I know enough what I'm doing. If they're putting in a brand new service, I'm sorry, I'm staying away because I'm not trying to end my life. And that's not that I don't want to help them. I might place a phone call to somebody I know that says, hey, these people need some help, but I've got to know what my limitation is. And
right.
I think those limits are there for all of us, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, financially. There are limitations.
Right. That's good. Do what? Yes.
I just wanted to add on to what Sister Nanette said. I have this patient currently who's dealing with cancer all over her body. And she came in and she said, I want my teeth taken care of because I want my immune system going after the big thing, the big stuff, not all of the little things. And she, a couple years ago, went to this doctor who ran all of these tests on her to figure out what she was allergic to because she wanted to eliminate allergies because, again, she doesn't want her immune system going after the little things. She wants it going after the big things. And she asked me, she said, I know I'm allergic to some of the materials that you guys use. Would you mind going through my allergy list and, letting the doctor know? And I was like, oh, sure. Like, it can't be that big. It was 18 pages, you guys. She emailed me this 18-page document. And when I got it, I was like, you know what? I really don't want to do this. And, something just hit me. And it was like, you told her. You said you would do this. You said that you would let them know. And, it still settles with me. I went through all of those pages, and I'm so happy that I did because there were so many things on her plan that we had made for her that her immune system would have been attacking because we would have been putting that into her body, and her body can't handle it. And so whenever I looked at the list and I was like, oh, wow, we use that, we use this. We're going to have to order something, so we're going to have to move her appointment a couple weeks out. I just really got hit with that. Her just saying, my immune system can't attack all of the little things.
Wow.
And God saying, that's why I gave you this big thing.
Right.
This is awesome.
And my goodness.
I think you're about to preach a message on
Lord,
that one.
she said that, and I thought,
Wow.
my God, that thought will preach all day long and twice on Sunday, y'all. Listen. I'm glad that she brought this up, though, and
Yes.
I'm not going to go down the alley that my brain wants to go right now. But to keep it focused on where we are in this discussion, I think keeping the main thing is important. Know what your limit is, but also know when you are serving someone else, what's the goal?
Right.
What's the goal? If I'm serving someone, my goal is not to just make them feel better. Ultimately, my goal is that they would see Jesus through me and be drawn to a relationship with him. That's the ultimate goal. That has to be the prize, right? And if anything else is the prize, then we're doing it for the wrong reason, and our motivation is wrong. And so I think that is very, very key of making sure for us that when we're serving somebody else, that it's not any of these little ulterior motives of, that they're going to think I'm a nicer person, or somebody might see what I'm doing for them, or whatever it may be. Pride is a weird thing, y'all. And pride will jump up and grab you. You think you're going through life without being prideful. Just let somebody come up and tell you you're doing a good job with something, and next thing you know, you feel that coming along. Say, yeah, I am doing a good job, aren't I? The point of serving, the point of doing this is to be the hands and the feet of Jesus.
That's it.
My Lord, I'm working on a message with that right now. Being his hands and his feet. And it's not good enough for us to have it in our mind that I plan to help somebody else. It's not good enough for us to have it in our heart. Well, I'm emotional and I'm concerned and I'm praying for somebody else. We've got to get the mission into our hands and feet. And that is the only way that we make a difference. And so we've got to keep the main thing. Our goal for serving anyone, it don't matter if you're serving soup in a soup kitchen, helping with a food pantry, filling up somebody's tank with gas, or helping somebody load up, whatever we're doing, that's not the goal. The job is to not get that job done. The goal is, let me tell you who Jesus is. The goal is that they would see something in us that makes them recognize there's something different about that person. And then we can turn them to the one who has made the difference. And I think that is such a huge key of keeping the main thing, whatever is most important.
And that also helps prevent burnout.
Yes, because I'm not doing it for myself.
That's it.
I'm not doing it so that somebody will pat me on the back. You know how it is. You help somebody and they don't say thank you, and then you get all twisted up over it. Well, I took half my day to go out there and help them do this, that, or the other, and they didn't even say thank you. Well, what were you doing it for? If I can get offended over somebody abusing me trying to do something in his name, I didn't really do it in his name. Mm-hmm. I did it in my own name because I'm the one wanting the credit, right? Brother Urshan was talking yesterday, and he brought up a situation. He said there was a man in the church that was talking about a season that they had gone through as a church family. This was a very tough season. And Brother Urshan said, he said, I was there for it. It was in the beginning of his pastorate. He said, I was there for it, so I remembered this. And he said, the more the man kept going into it, I'm expecting him at the end to turn it towards, and I want to thank you for your leadership in that. Because he said, I made some pretty wise decisions. I'm going to be honest. There's some wisdom that came there. And he said, right about the time that I think he's about to thank me, this guy takes a left turn and goes, and I praise God for everything that he's done and brought us through this. And Brother Urshan said, I had to stop myself because I was building up waiting for him to pat me on the back, and he's giving praise to Jesus. Whenever we are serving someone else, no matter what we're doing in his name, we got to recognize we don't get any of the credit. None of that comes to us. And what that does is it takes away the opportunity for burnout and for offense and for, well, they didn't appreciate it anyways. Who cares if they appreciated it if you did it in his name? He's the one getting the glory, right?
What made me think of it, and I'm sorry to put the spotlight on Sister Christy, I've been in that job, and when you're working 12, 14 hours a day and you feel like your head just hits the pillow and you got to get back up and do it again, the only thing that prevents burnout, and I've seen her doing it, is remembering, I'm not doing this for me. She doesn't need that job. And besides that, with her skills, she could go somewhere else and make twice what she's making at the preschool. But she's not doing it for herself. She's remembering what the ultimate goal is. The ultimate goal is to show these people who Jesus is, and that's what prevents the burnout. I'm sorry to hit the brakes and bring everybody's head forward and slam on the windshield, but it is 10:46 and we have to stop. So I want to thank everybody for being here today. And thank you, Kaelyn. You did an awesome job. Thank you for all of you. We're going to take a